Hey everyone, hi. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be getting ready. For the day. I have quite the day ahead of me, and I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in April. And if you like this kind of video, well, I should probably say hi. I'm Shelly. I always forget that. I'm Shelly, and I like chatting books. I like chatting books while doing other things like getting ready or using my hands in some way. And if you like that kind of vibe, like a cozy, chill, hangout kind of vibe, I would encourage you to subscribe, like the video, stick around, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I should have put on sunscreen before I started recording because this turns my face quite white. Oh gosh, okay, we're just gonna get this on and then I'll start talking books. Finding a good sunscreen is the bane of my existence, but we're going with it. I have really sensitive skin, and so sometimes sunscreens that work for some people really don't work for me because they cause me to break out. And then the sunscreens that don't cause me to break out leave this white cast that I have to deal with. But we're talking books. That's what's the most important. We are talking books today. Okay, so April was a really interesting month. I was very sick, and thank you all. I've talked about it enough that I don't want to talk about it again. And thank you all so much for just coming out and being so kind and supportive and understanding about feeling off. Like, I just felt off in my mind, in my body, even after I was healing and recovering from a kidney infection, essentially. Again, I don't really want to get into it, but so many of you were just really kind, and a lot of the comments really helped me solidify and understand what was going on. Like, I couldn't read a book. I couldn't read a book about sickness right after being sick. And one of the comments from Deea, who has a channel, I love her channel, she's at Novel Idea, she was saying that, maybe this is a time of brevity, like I need a bit of brevity from this sickness and a reprieve, essentially, from this mindset of sickness. And I was like, yeah, I really needed a break. I needed a moment to gather my wits about me before diving back into heavier literature that talks about being sick. So it really was helpful. All of your comments were helpful, and I was just so glad that I just kind of got that off my chest. Sometimes I feel like a little bit stuffed up when talking to you all, because I feel like there's this elephant in my mind, in the room of my mind, and I feel like I have to talk about it first, or I would like to get it sort of out there, and it clears the pipe waves of my mind. It's like getting the elephant out of the room of my mind, and I'm able to chat with you all. I hope that this is making sense, and for all of you who are like, we just want to know what you read, I'm so sorry. But yeah, anyways, so my month was marked with sickness, and it was also a really interesting month because I had a lot of buddy reads, and I haven't had a lot of buddy reads in a while. But it happened, and I was so grateful for it, and it was a really wonderful buddy reading month for me, as it tends to be when I do buddy reads. But I had more buddy reads than normal, and that was kind of an interesting thing to go through as well. I don't know how to talk about my books. I don't know where to start. I had such a great reading month. Okay, I'm gonna get my wits about me and actually start talking about books. So give me one moment. I'm gonna finish doing some stuff to my face, and I will come back with some fortitude in regards to talking about books. I've thought about it. Okay, I am going to talk about prize books, books I read for ongoing prizes right now. Then I'm going to be talking about books that were great introductions to an author's work. So it's the first time I've read this author. And then I'm going to proceed to talk about authors that this is my second book from them, because there's actually quite a few of those authors. And finally, I will end with some of the highlights of the picture books that I read this month, since I was running a readathon entitled Picture This with my friend Jack at Spread Book Joy. Okay, so in regards to prize books, I read Boulder by Ava Baltazar. And this is translated by Julia Sanchez. This is shortlisted. This book was recently shortlisted for the International Booker. I feel like it really goes with my shirt today. That's kind of fun. Anyways, and this is a very poetic, almost dreamy book. Not, when I say dreamy, it's almost in its language. It's very, it almost like rolls off the tongue, or it really has this succinctness and poetic feeling with all of the words that were chosen, which I really, really enjoyed. This tells the story of Boulder, so a woman named Boulder, and she is someone who I think feels most comfortable, unchained from everything, or like not tied down to anything, who is really fluid in her life. And this is not a spoiler, she gets into a relationship with a woman that she's clearly in love with. And in this relationship, her and the other woman have the goal to start a family, but it's really the goal of her partner, Boulder's partner. And interestingly, it is the way that the desires for motherhood and motherhood itself changes a person. And it's interesting because I myself am a mother, and I felt that change. All of a sudden, you have this little person who is reliant on you to be fed, to be taken care of, to be put to sleep, especially in that stage of infancy. And so I was like the partner that Boulder is describing, our main character is describing. And it tells you, this book is more the perspective of the person who is not the absolute 100% primary caregiver of the child. And so it was almost like reading how motherhood changes the relationship, but from the perspective of my partner. And so I thought that was a really lovely and interesting take. I thought it was a very powerful and hard-hitting book for it being so tiny, and a really enjoyable read through and through. Next up, I read for the Women's Prize, and this book was also shortlisted. So I was very excited. I was chuffed in a way that I chose so well for my one book reads for the International Booker and for the Women's Prize. But I read The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. This is my first book by Maggie O'Farrell, and I quite liked this book. It tells the story of Lucrezia, who at the very, very beginning, it's a very smoking gun moment. We know something happens. And it tells the story of Lucrezia, who dies really, really young. She is married off to the prince, I forget his name, but the leader of Ferrara, and she becomes I guess is the Count of Ferrara, because she's the Countess of Ferrara. No, she's the Duchess. My goodness, what is going on? Count, Countess, Duke, Duchess. No, she marries the Duke of Ferrara, and at a very young age, and she dies within the first year of their marriage. Not a spoiler, because it is said even before the first chapter, there's this little paragraph that explains, her fate. It's like a little bite of a biography, It's a synopsis of her life at the very beginning of the book. My goodness, Shelley, get it together. So I liked this book in a lot of ways. It felt very modern. Lucrezia has these modern sensibilities of being her own person, being her own woman. She loves art. I love the themes of art in this book. And I also watched Britta Bowler here on BookTube. I will leave her channel and this video linked down below, in which she reviews this book. And she brought up a really interesting and good point, in that the idea that Lucrezia wants to be her own woman, this idea of independence in her femininity and in who she is, this individualism, is really a modern idea. And she probably wouldn't have had those sensibilities in this time period. And I thought that was really an interesting critique, and I absolutely agreed with her. And so it's funny because as a reading experience, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the character. I enjoyed how strong Lucrezia was. But I also understand that there's a mismatch. It doesn't match the time period for which it was written. And this is the 16th century, the 1550s. And so I keep on thinking about Britta's critique, which I, again, absolutely agree with. And I wonder if this is not the best book on the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And so anyways, I'm going to be picking up Demon Copperhead either today or tomorrow by Barbara Kingsolver. And I'm wondering if that's actually going to be a better book than this one, even though I did find this a very enjoyable reading experience. Next up, we will do New to Me. New to Me. So I read with my friend George, who I need to email back. I feel like I say this every time I make a video about George and I reading a book together. But he and I read A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. And this is one of the classic books that I chose for myself to read in 2023. And I'm really glad that I read it, because this is a very quiet, almost slice of life type of novel, which you get with the title, A Month in the Country. It really is capturing this this month that our main character spends in the country. Our main character is Tom Birkin, and he is a World War I vet. He fought in World War I. It's a little bit about the effects of somebody who served their time in the Great War. It is also about art, which is lovely because Tom Birkin gets sent to the country to uncover and in some ways restore a painting that was covered up years and years and years ago, before his lifetime. And so he's having these moments with this painting, and he's getting to know the townspeople. It's a quiet novel with beautiful descriptions and truly funny moments. And it's one of those books that after I read it, I was like, it would probably be really good on a reread. Like, it probably would be even better on a reread, because the way that the story unfolds, it's very like, is that what he's trying to say? Like, is this it? Is this what's happening right now? And then as you read further, you're like, oh, okay, this is actually what's going on. And so it's kind of it was an interesting, like, experience, and I do think actually would be better on a reread. But what a beautiful novel. Quiet, not overdone, not full of itself, knows exactly what it's doing. And now the light is shining on me. I'm gonna shut these curtains as I finish up talking about this book, but a really lovely read. And it was, as always, beautiful, wonderful, amazing, incredible to read with my friend George. Okay, that's better. The sun is not assaulting me anymore. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a couple of new to me authors that I actually listened to, one of which was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Everybody's talking about Emily. She's like the contemporary romance queen of the moment right now. That's how I think of her. She's just incredible. Like, she's just having this incredible moment, I guess. I liked the book. I'll just say that. So in my way of saying she's incredible, but I feel like everybody talks about her. Everybody knows her. She just has this new book out. She's having a moment, And I felt like I was missing out by not reading her. And so I was like, I'll pick up an audiobook of this. And it was so much fun. If you are somebody who's like, I don't know about contemporary romance, I have no idea. This is my appeal. This is my appeal to you. This is my argument for you. I also was one of you. I was like, I don't know about contemporary romance. I'm a serious reader. Gosh, could I sound more snobby? But, you know, I was like, I don't know. But then I am such a huge fan of romantic comedies. I'm a huge fan of romantic comedies. I love, you know, While You Were Sleeping, and I love, you know, Meg Ryan movies. Oh my gosh, When Harry Met Sally is like one of my favorite movies of all time. I just love it. 10 Things I Hate About You. I love all the movies that are romantic comedies that sort of, you know, are of my era. That are of my, I don't really seek out new romantic comedies these days, but I am a romantic comedy movie girly. And so, you know, picking up Emily Henry's Book Lovers, it's about, you know, a woman who is dedicated to her career. She's focused on it. She's sort of narrowly minded. Is that the right term? I don't even know. But she's focused, you know? She's focused on her career. And also what I loved about this book is that she is feeling very disconnected with her sister. And so it's part about reconnecting with her sister, whom she loves, and you get their backstory and the way that things have gotten awkward between them and why that's a big deal. And then you also have her love interest, who's also very focused on his work, and they've disagreed before, and you know, and so it's about, you know, loosening her up, loosening him up a little bit, being in a small town sort of by chance together, and the way that their love story unfolds. It's a little bit, you know, had some spice in it. But you know, it's so funny because, like, you know, like when you watch romantic comedies, when one watches romantic comedies, there's spice in it. And I feel like if you are a fan, like I am, of movies like The Proposal with Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds, or, you know, cheesy fun, it sort of has that vibe to it, or even When Harry Met Sally, which I love. I love that movie with a passion. I love that movie. And, you know, or something, you know, of that vein, you know, where then I feel like you would really enjoy Book Lovers. And then what's also fun is that, you know, Emily Henry is clearly a reader. She knows who she's writing to, and so there are these lovely book references in it, and, you know, her characters are involved in the publishing industry, and it's just like, it was just so much fun. And I think that listening to it for me was really nice, because I listen to audiobooks when I'm making dinner at night, when I am doing chores around the house, and I really do like an audiobook going, even in the background of my reading life. Like, maybe it's not my priority listen, or when I have downtime, it's maybe not the thing I go to, but I do like having one on the go. And so it was just really good for that, because, you know, it's not bogged down with a ton of characters. It's not like overly complicated, and it was just fun. There's a good humor to it. It was just fun. It was fun. And so Emily Henry, that was a hit for me. It was just a lovely introduction to her work. Weirdly though, I own the book, The People We Meet on Vacation. I think it's actually back there, which I'm going to unhaul, because I've heard that of this contemporary romance moment that Emily Henry has been in for a moment, that's actually her worst one. It's the one that everybody says is off a bit, or is not up to the standards of her other works. So I think I'm going to skip that one, but I'm going to go to her other one. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure you all know. But I wouldn't be surprised if I slowly throughout this year or throughout the next couple years, I pick up all of her contemporary romance books, besides perhaps The People We Meet on Vacation, because I've just heard mixed reviews about that one in particular. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about this Emily Henry Book Lovers moment, but just know that it was a successful read for me. then I listened to Tayler Jenkins Reid. What? Who am I? Who am I? Oh, yeah, I finally did it. I was somebody who was like, I don't know about Tayler Jenkins Reid. I have no interest. And I finally picked up and I listened to it with my friend Fraser Simons of the channel Springboard Thought. I will leave his channel linked down below. But I listened to Daisy Jones and the Six, which really lends itself to an audio book format because it is done in, I mean, I'm probably the last person to have ever read this book. I mean, everyone and their mother has read this book. But it is about a band that it's done in an interview style, almost like a behind the music, you know, those music documentaries. It's like that. And you're getting a chorus of perspectives of a band that, you know, didn't really make it. Like, it made it to a point and then, something happened. And so it's one of those investigations into what happened to the band that seemed like it was going to have this big, huge, incredible, amazing, bananas moment. And then it doesn't, you know, it does for a second and then it something happens. And so you're in this mysterious investigation of, you know, what happened to this band that seemed like it was going to be the next big thing, the next Beatles. And it's set in the 70s, I believe. And so the time period is really cool. And, you know, the descriptions of the outfits and the grunge and also the different perspectives of the band members, and everybody has their own take on certain iconic moments in this career of the band, and everyone also has their own take about like what happened during this time. And it was great. It's mostly about the relationship of the two main singers and their love-hate relationship and the weirdness between them and how they work together. And it's mostly about that, but it's also just about it's a little bit deeper than I think I thought the book was going to be, because it touches on female relationships and women supporting women, and it's about, you know, the complications of a marriage and the way that we deal with that. You know, it's about more than just this band that didn't make it. And I enjoyed this. I am somebody who I got really, like a decade ago, I don't mean to go down a total tangent, but a decade ago, I went down this rabbit trail of Brian Jonestown Massacre, which is the band that truly didn't make it. And there was a documentary called Dig, and it talks about this band like almost making it. So many times this band almost like breaks through and becomes the band of the moment of like the early 2000s or the late 90s, early 2000s, and it has this like funky 60s feel to it. I actually saw them play live, this band, Brian Jonestown Massacre. I will leave their stuff linked down below, and maybe a video as well. Gosh, I'm linking a lot of stuff and a lot of people, so I'm going to actually have to get onto my metadata train. But anyways, I really loved this band, and so the Daisy Jones and the Six reminded me a little bit of that vibe, you know, this band that didn't quite, or you know, made it to a point but didn't quite go the distance. And then I also have enjoyed from time to time, you know, the documentaries, like the behind the music documentaries. And I liked the movie Almost Famous, but I don't exactly remember the thrust. I mean, I remember the idea of the movie, but I couldn't recount to you like scene for scene what the movie was about, but I remember liking it. So this was really up my alley. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Tayler Jenkins Reid and her take on it all. And it was a good introduction. Weirdly though, I don't know if I want to read anything else by her. I was like, I read her best. I'm not really interested in her other works, especially if she's doing the same thing, you know, these interviews to uncover something about someone or a few people or, you know, a band, a subject. I don't know if that's like my gig, but as like a one-time thing, I enjoyed this book for what it was, and it was a lot of fun and perfect for audio, like just perfect, because there's the audiobook has multiple different narrators to represent each person in the band, and that was just the best. It was great, and so it was great. Anyway, so I'm gonna stop talking about it and move on to my final. Oh no, I think that was it. Give me a second. Oh, that was it for the new to me authors. The rest are authors I've read before. I feel so smug about that. I'm really growing quite a bit as a reader, like digging into authors' collections more than just one, like their first book. So, second books that I read from folks. The first one was Donna Tartt's The Secret History. Oh my gosh, this was great. This was great. Now, I read The Goldfinch in March, and that was great. I went on and on and on about that book, and, you know, from a critique, from the standpoint of a book critic, The Goldfinch is, without a doubt, a better book. It's more cinematic, her writing has developed, the characters are more nuanced. It is about a young man who is really grappling. The Goldfinches is about a young man, Theo, who is really truly grappling with his morality throughout the whole book. And it's like his soul is in balance, and you feel that for him. And her characters are incredibly nuanced. Now, The Secret History is about a young man. I forget his name. I figured it out. So it's about Richard. And in the preface of this book, you know that Richard is a part of or has committed a murder. And you're wondering, it's not a who, as everybody says, it's not a whodunit, it's a whydunit, like what happened. And so it's about Richard getting into a very small college on the East Coast, on the northern East Coast. And he wants to get into like the most elite, the most like prestigious program in this very small, in this very small college. And of course, the most like elite program is that of, ancient literature, reading in Greek, ancient Greek, and speaking Latin. And so he, he gets into this program, and in it there are like the most pretentious, the most snobby, the like most vapid, in a sense, students in this program that are also very cliquish and very in-group, out-group feeling and vibe. And it's his story with these friends, and I really truly mean friends in quotation marks, because are they really friends? It's like they lie to each other, they lie to themselves, they're so dishonest, they're so terrible. She really writes characters that you can really get down with hating, to be honest with you. Like, you do not like these characters in the least. And it is okay, because you're not supposed to. And it's really, it's commentary on pretentiousness and our own pretensions and the way they develop and the way they grow and are nuanced. And interestingly, I think that in terms of fun, because reading is supposed to be fun, in terms of fun, this book was more fun than the Goldfinch. The Goldfinch, though, is far more thought-provoking, in my humble opinion, and more nuanced and just more subtle. But this book is just a lot of fun in a way, and it's a lot more about the consequences to the choices that you make, which is really, I thought was really interesting. So yeah, this was I read this with Ann Novella. And you know, she's a fantastic buddy reader, perfect for this kind of read. And I was so glad to finally read it. I feel like Donna Tartt and her books, her very short back catalog, has been on my mind for years, and now I'm finally getting to it. I have 2 books left, I believe. The second to last is going to be the second book in the Lindley series by Elisabeth George. This tells, you know, I feel kind of silly sort of summarizing a murder mystery. But this tells the story of a group of theater people, and of course someone in their company gets murdered, and you know, we're trying to find out why. And of course, you know, in this book, I feel like you really see Elisabeth George dialing in her craft. I think she focuses in on the right things. She's developing certain characters. I would say there's Lindley and Barbara Havers, and then St. James and Lady Helen, who is Lindley's lover, and Deborah, St. James's wife. So you have 5 essentially main characters, and I felt like she didn't develop all of the characters. She just picked and chose which ones she wanted to develop. And I thought that was fantastic. It just shows, like, you know, discernment on her part, discernment as a writer on her part, and then also, like, it was at the center of it was a great mystery. Now, unfortunately, I read this while I was incredibly sick, so by the time we got to like who actually done it, I was like, oh, okay, you know. But the thing is like, I love her writing so much. I really just enjoy her approach, her playfulness, her literary references, the nuance of her characters. I like it so much that I was just like, the mystery, like I was invested near the end of it all, as I was, again, just so ill. I got to the end and I was like, that's fine. But I still, like, I loved it. Like, I loved Lindley. I loved Inspector Lindley, and I love his relationship with Barbara Havers. And we move forward in time just enough to see that their relationship has developed. And I just thought it was so good. It was definitely, in the first book, I felt like she had a lot to set up, a lot of people to introduce, a lot of relationships to dig into, and to kind of show that she has an idea and she's trying to go somewhere. And in this one, I felt like she was a bit more relaxed and more focused on a really good mystery and developing a few of her main characters, just enough to keep you wanting to read more, at least kept me wanting to read more. So a successful read, again, for me. I keep on saying that for all of them. I had a really great reading month. I had a really, really great reading month, and so you're seeing that come through as I wrap all these books up. And then finally, I don't know, maybe this is the creme de la creme. I have no idea, but I really loved this book. Again, it was an audiobook. I listened to it, but I picked up Patrick Radden Keefe's Say Nothing, which talks about the troubles in Northern Ireland and focuses in on a few key figures who were part of the IRA, the truly, like, fanatical terrorist militia in a way in Northern Ireland, and it was phenomenal. It was so good. It was so interesting. This is my second book by Patrick Radden Keefe. I read Empire of Pain, and I liked that book, but I thought that he was really hard on the Sackler family, who is in a lot of ways responsible for, or it has played a huge role in the opioid epidemic here in the US. However, when Say Nothing is his first book, and I actually thought it was better because it was so much more nuanced. Some of these individuals who made truly horrendous decisions for their life as to be part of an extremist group like the IRA, he shows you their lives and the way that their lives played out. And I think in a lot of ways, you get a lot of nuance from that. So I felt like these people, these individuals, were very much well-rounded in the way that he showed you their struggles and the evil, truly evil things that they did, and the way that those decisions followed them throughout their lives, and their struggles in later life for some of them. And I really appreciated that, because I felt like I had a very nuanced understanding, especially for the key individuals he focused on in this book. And it made me want to read more about the Troubles. I went down this little rabbit trail of looking up books about the Troubles in Northern Ireland. I thought it was fascinating. It was so fascinating. And I really think it was like the standout read for the month, or listen for the month. I mean, it's so good. It was so good. And I'm just so glad that I was able to consume this book and get through it in a way that I felt like I took a lot from it, despite also during this time being incredibly sick. But I was so impressed by this book, and it's like I want to read his latest book, which I think is called Rogues, but I know that that's like shorter pieces. It's like he's a very hit and miss author for me, because it's like I liked Empire of Pain, but I didn't love it. But then I loved Say Nothing. So I'm like, maybe I should have a tiebreaker book to see if he is indeed a favorite author. But I got so much from it. And if you're really if you're interested in what happened, or like what in the nuances of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, I would highly recommend you pick up Say Nothing, because it does such a good job laying out the conflict and why the conflict got to the point where it got to. It's just a fantastic book. So good, okay? Like, so good. I'm gonna stop gushing about it, because it was truly, I think, the standout read for me this month. It was so incredible. Okay, and then finally, I'm gonna be talking about some of the picture books I read this month. I read a ton of picture books. I decided to do a bit of a deep dive into a very specific list that I have a lot of affinity towards, a lot of love towards, and it is the New York Times Best Illustrated Books for the year. It's been going on since the 50s, so I actually looked at the books that won Best Illustrated, for the 50s, and I got from my library all of the books that showed up in the library catalog for those years, for that decade. And so some of them were Little Blue, Little Yellow by Leo Leone, which is incredible book about color and emotions. So good. What I love about this list in particular is that they choose illustrators that have a very specific point of view. Their aesthetic is well developed, and you can see that come through even in the 50s. It's like they're choosing these books, and they just have this very gorgeous style. And so I'm just highly impressed by this list. And I will link, hopefully, if I remember, I will leave link down below the website I used in order to look up backlisted, the backlist of this ongoing, essentially like award or spotlight that the New York Times has done for, the 70 years. So anyways, this was a beautiful book. And then I have Along a Long Road by Frank Viva. I've read, I have another book by him called Mom and Dad Are Palindromes. And he has this very sort of simplistic but curvy, beautiful, interesting style to his illustrations. And you see it quite a bit in this book. I also picked up Roland by, the story is by Nellie Stefani, and the pictures are by Andre Francois. And I really loved the colors in this book, because he only uses blue, black, white, and this like gold, this goldy color. I love, the full page illustrations. Oh gosh, it's so beautiful. And they have these matted, the pages are very matte, and I really love that as well. They're not glossy pages, and so I like the texture of the pages as well. We have I Know a Lot of Things by Anne and Paul Rand, and this book is more of an abstraction, like it has more of an abstract feeling of art. which I did like. Again, gorgeous colors, very, very, very beautiful. Hard not to like these books because they're just so pretty. Like, they're so pretty. And then we have What Did You Say, Dear? This is by Cecile Jocelyn, and the pictures are by Maurice Sendak. Maurice Sendak has been honored by this list multiple times, and you can see why. His illustrations are gorgeous. And this is a book about manners. Manners for all occasions, which I thought was really charming. You know, saying no thank you, yes please, and just so good, so good. And so interesting to follow a career like Maurice Sendak, who has truly developed his style in many different directions and feels quite the master of art. So really interesting to see this. And then also on this list was Curious George Gets a Medal. I'm not a huge Curious George fan, but I could see why he was honored for, who is this by? H.A. Ray. I could see why he was honored by this Best Illustrated list because, you know, the illustrations are very charming, but just not my favorite. And I'm willing to admit that. But still, like, the use of the page, the playfulness of the use of the page, the way the text is laid out, the cuteness of George, you know, it's hard not to like, even though, again, I can fully admit that it's not my favorite illustration style. And then we challenged readers and video makers alike to do a deep dive into an illustrator, and I chose Beatrice Alamagda, who was recently honored by this Best Illustrated books chosen by the New York Times and New York Public Library for 2022. I think it was called Stories Told Wrong. I believe the video I did about that list linked down below. It came out on like April 1st, I think. Like I published it on April 1st. I have a little video series about this list. I'm obsessed with this list, by the way. But anyway, so I was introduced to Beatrice Alamagda's illustrations, and so I chose to read a bunch of her books. And I read On a Magical Do-Nothing Day, very cute, very sweet, about sort of, you know, being bored and keeping yourself busy. I also read Child of Glass, which was very beautiful. She has changed her style over the years, and this book has beautiful transparent-ish pages. So yeah, Child of Glass. I like the illustration style, but I wasn't the biggest fan of the story in this book. Then we have this book called Things That Go Away, which is sweet. It was all about, you know, things that are fleeting, things that transform. A small wound almost always vanishes without leaving a trace. And again, you have this transparent page that shows you how the wound vanishes. And it was, you know, tears dry, and it just was very, very sweet. It was a very good use of those translucent pages because as you flip them, the thing that she's talking about that goes away, like tears drying, will flip to the other side, and so you see how the tears have gone away on the face. So very smart book in a way. And then the book that was like the hit for the family, no, not necessarily for me. I mean, I thought the book was cute, but my sons love this, especially my younger son who's almost 5. And it's Never Not Ever. He asked me to read this. He asked me to read this. I read this to him like 2 or 3 or 4 times, and he asked my husband to read this. And it's about a little bat who doesn't want to go to school, and she ends up like shrinking her parents and taking them to school. And it has this refrain that is never not ever, which he really loved and was saying along, which is just he would say it along with when it came up in the book. And it just shows, you know, how important repetition is for children and how good it is for their brain. And so even though it wasn't my favorite book by Beatrice Alamagda, I mean, he really enjoyed it. And so I liked that he enjoyed it. If you love picture books and you want to know more about picture books, or you just want to see more illustrated picture books, I will leave a couple of videos linked down below that I've done dedicated to showing picture books that are beautiful, which is kind of my thing, one of my things here on BookTube. But yeah, that is it. That is it. I'm done. I'm done talking about my reading month. It was a very successful reading month, despite of, or in spite of, or beyond the fact that I was incredibly sick for parts of it. But yeah, I had a really, truly enjoyable reading month, and I loved participating in my own event, Picture This, and in other events like People April, hosted by Ros at Scala Downloading about the books, and Elisabeth at Bookends and Books. It was just a really lovely reading month, and I just had such an incredible time reading with others. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm so sorry, Sandy and Sonja. I read Say Nothing with my friends Sandy and Sonja. Sandy has a channel here on BookTube, misreads a lot, and she's lovely, wonderful, amazing, incredible. Sorry, I'm just having a moment. But yeah, anyways, okay, so that's it. I'm all ready, as I have been for several minutes, and I've done the task of talking about the books I read in April. And, you know, thanks so much for sticking around. If you have made it to the end of the video and you are not subscribed, I would encourage you to subscribe. And for all of you who like my videos, leave comments, are just so supportive in your kind words, your emails, your messages, I just truly thank you. You are really the engine that keeps this channel going. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and just giving me your attention. You have no idea how much I appreciate it, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.